Let's move over to Manchester City. Obviously, we know the news, Pete, about Rodri being out for the season with an ACL tear. Will they try and replace him in January?
I'm sure they'll be open to it, but it's not going to be easy. How do you replace a player like Rodri? He's almost irreplaceable in that Manchester City team. He's the world's best defensive midfielder. There's no doubts about that. He's in the reckoning for the Ballon d'Or, which will be announced later this year as well. The top players that Manchester City would be looking at to try and replace Rodri are not normally available in the January transfer window. So lots of obstacles in Manchester City's way to try and find somebody to replace Rodri. As I said, I don't think they'll panic. I don't think Pep Guardiola will be thinking, "Oh, I need to bring somebody in." He'll only bring in the right player if the player does become available in January. And as I said, it's not an easy window to do your business because you've got 1 month to try and find that player and get a deal done. And with clubs knowing how maybe desperate Manchester City are to bring in a new midfielder, that could put the price tag up on certain targets as well. So I think it's a real conundrum for Manchester City and Pep Guardiola to see what they're going to do. Obviously, they've got these next couple of months to see how they can cope without Rodri in that midfield. And they do have options in there. Let's not forget that it's a star-studded squad that Pep Guardiola has to choose from. Big opportunity now for Mateo Kovacic, who has impressed this season. He started the season in place of Rodri, who's still a bit fatigued from the Euros, and he's done a really good job so far. So big opportunity for him. And there is other players in that squad as well who I think can step up and maybe play in that defensive midfield role. I think John Stones has shown in the past when he's become an inverted defender into midfield, he can maybe fill that role as defensive midfielder. And then I do think there's other players in that squad as well who could step up. But yeah, Manchester City aren't just going to go out there and splash the money out for somebody in January unless it's the right fit. And although they do have money to spend from that sale from Julian Alvarez to Athletic Madrid, I don't think there'll be any knee-jerk reactions from City in the transfer window in January.
No doubt. And Paul, who is kind of your preferred replacement for Rodri? It may not be one player, right? I mean, we know the responsibilities that Rodri takes on. It might need to be two players. Might be switching to a double pivot, Rico Lewis getting involved. Who would you like to see fill that spot for Manchester City?
I think it depends who they play, and I think Pep picks his teams for the opposition. I think when you look at them, when they play the likes of Arsenal, when they play the likes, the top 4 or 5 teams, I think you'll see John Stones playing in there as an inverted, or maybe actually just not even an inverted fullback, but actually as a holding midfielder, because he's done that role before, and I think his defensive capabilities are better than others in that role. Listen, we've not spoken about Gundogan either. We talk about timing and opportunity. The opportunity to bring Gundogan back to the club. I mean, with Rodri's injury now, it seems like a great signing to have Gundogan as the option in there. Kovacic, like Pete said, he can play in there. Rico Lewis. So you've got John Stones, Rico Lewis, Kovacic and Gundogan, who can all play in that role, and they all bring different things, different elements to that role. So I think you'll see him rotating between those players until January comes, if he's able to get a replacement, and depending on the opposition that they're playing against, whether they want more of an attacking midfield or a defensive-minded midfield. The thing that we're missing is it's Rodri. Rodri can get into any team in the world, regardless of how the team's playing, whether the top of the league, unbeaten for however long. Every single team in the world, Rodri gets in the starting 11. That's how big of a miss he is. You look at his numbers, you look at his stats, not just at club level but at international level. He is going to be a huge miss. You talk about Man City, the games that they don't win or the percentages without Rodri. It's there to see. So they're going to have to find a way. But listen, they find a way. They had De Bruyne missing for huge chunks of last season. They had Haaland missing for huge chunks of last season. Granted, they're not Rodri, but they're key players, and they've got a squad with enough quality and to find a way, but it will be interesting. I don't think it's going to be one specific person who is a direct replacement. I think it'll be a rotation of the players mentioned, depending on the opposition.
No doubt. And Pete, a couple of names that are being thrown out as potential replacements, or ways to fix this issue for Manchester City. Nicolo Barella of Inter Milan, potentially Martin Zubamendi, who's been thrown around with the move to the Premier League for years. Are either of those ones that you might see happening this January?
I think the difficult deals to do in January, there's no doubt about that. Two quality players. Barella's a real top player, Italy international, played at the highest level for club and country. I think he's under a long-term contract at Inter Milan until 2029, so I think it would be hard to try and price him away from Inter in a January transfer window. It would be a huge fee. You're probably looking £70 million plus for somebody like Barella, but yeah, he's a top player. He would come in and make an impact, I think, if he was to make a move to Manchester City or even to the Premier League in general. Obviously, Zubamendi was a lot of focus on him for Liverpool during the summer transfer window, but he ended up turning down the advances from Liverpool to stay at Real Sociedad. There's been a few reports that he's been having a bit of a rethink on that decision and might be open to it. So that might open a door for Manchester City to maybe try and lure Zubimendi to England. Obviously, the Spanish connection there with Pep Guardiola as well might work in their favour. But again, I still think they're difficult deals to do in the January transfer window when not big money is normally spent in that window, especially on big signings as well. So I think Man City, they will try things during these next couple of months with the players they've got in their squad, and if they can find a solution within the squad, I think that's what Pep Guardiola would prefer to do.
No doubt. Paul, let's talk about Everton. Sean Dyche finally got his first point of the season, but obviously still on the hot seat after a slow start. Gareth Southgate, a potential name linked with that job. Do you think that's one that would fit in well with Everton?
No, don't see that as a good fit at all. Obviously, Gareth Southgate's been out of club management for a long time, so we've got no real recent history or record to compare that to. You look at what he's done with the England side, you look at the way that the team plays. Sean Dyche is a specialist of getting the best out of a small squad on a tight budget. I wouldn't be confident of Gareth Southgate going in there and saving Everton from relegation in his first job, because that's the remit. Everton have got to stay in the Premiership this year. They've had a really poor start. They've got to go into the new stadium next year with Premiership football. Sean Dyche is capable of doing that, and I've said from the start, I think it's not going to be pretty at times. It's going to be a tough watch, and it has been for the last couple of seasons. But what he's done there with the points deductions that they've had and kept him in the Premier League. And actually, I was at the Aston Villa game and I didn't see a team there where the manager had lost the dressing room. I saw a team that went to Villa. They had a game plan. They played a counter-attacking football. They hit Villa on the break, got a couple of goals. And in all honesty, they could and should have come away from Villa Park with a draw. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has two great opportunities, one to make it 3-1 and then to draw level at 3-all. So when they went to Leicester last weekend, it was never going to be an easy watch. Like, I don't think they will at Crystal Palace this weekend. I'm not so sure that's going to be an easy watch. But I think for me, that's where Everton get off the mark. Talk of his tenure as manager, it's always going to happen when a new owner comes in. You know, a new owner has new ideas, and when a football team has underperformed, like the perception of Everton is, the new owner's going to want to put his own stamp on things, which is only natural. And Sean understands things like that. You know, you listen to him in his press conference, he talks quite openly about dealing with owners and the expectations of new owners and what they want. The thing for me at the moment is with Everton, the minimum is staying in the Premier League this year. I just think if you're going to get rid of Sean Dyche and you're going to sack Sean Dyche, who are you going to go and look for? You're going to go and look for Sean Dyche. You're going to go and look for somebody who keeps you in the Premier League and works with a short budget and a small squad. So short term, I don't see there's any call to replace him whatsoever. In long term, if the owner's got different views and got different ideas, that's what happens. You're a victim of circumstance. But at the moment, off the field stuff needs to be sorted out for Everton. But the key thing is for me, yes, sort the off field out, but they have to be in the Premier League and then start moving forward if you want to go in a different direction.